Imagine, if you will, a single palm tree. Not a forest, not a grove, not a row of picturesque coconuts lining a bustling resort beach. Just one. Its trunk arcs dramatically. A long, graceful curve of weathered bark that leans out over water, so clear it seems not to exist, a liquid mirror for the sky. This is not a postcard. This is a planet. A specific, lonely, breathtaking planet of sand, salt, and singular, stubborn life. And right now, wherever you are, sitting in traffic, in a fluorescent lit office, or scrolling through another endless feed, that tree is there. It is bending in a breeze you cannot feel, casting a shifting shadow you cannot see, its fronds whispering secrets to the tide. This image, a lone palm tree leaning over a crystal clear shoreline, is one of the most universally recognized symbols of peace, escape, and beauty on Earth. But I am here to tell you that everything you think you know about this scene is a beautiful, tranquil lie. This is not an invitation to vacation. This is a distress signal from the edge of the world, a geological scream etched in silhouette against the blue. For the next 20 minutes, I am going to anchor you to that single, leaning tree. And by the time we are done, you will never look at paradise the same way again. You will understand the violent physics that shape that curve, the desperate biology that fuels its survival, the terrifying fragility of that crystal clear water, and the profound, almost haunting message this single organism has been trying to send us for decades. This is a story of erosion and resilience, of isolation and connection, of a beauty born from constant, unrelenting struggle. So, lean in. Close the other tabs. This is not background noise. This is a deep dive into the most deceptive quiet on Earth, and it begins with a simple, terrifying question. Why is that tree alone? That solitary stance is our first clue that this is a landscape of extremes. A healthy, supported palm in a nutrient-rich environment grows tall and straight, competing for sunlight in a crowded canopy. But here, on this lonely shoreline, there is no competition because nothing else can survive. The leaning arc is a direct result of environmental stress, most commonly relentless, directional wind. This is a gentle sea breeze. This is a perpetual, punishing force that has pushed and shaped the tree since it was a sapling. The tree has growth patterns, a scientific process called thigmomorphogenesis, show a history of constant pressure. Every cell on the windward side has grown tougher, denser, while the leeward side stretches towards whatever light it can find, often away from the wind, creating that iconic curve. It is a living record of every storm that has passed, a botanical diary written in lignin and cellulose. But the wind is only the sculptor. The real artist is the ground beneath it, or, more accurately, the lack thereof. That crystal clear water is clear, because it is likely nutrient poor, often flowing over a base of porous coral rock or pure silica sand. There's little soil to hold nutrients or anchor roots deeply. The palm's root system is a shallow, widespread network, a desperate clutch at a vanishing world. And herein lies the central, silent drama. The shoreline is disappearing. Coastal erosion, accelerated by rising sea levels and the loss of protective barrier reefs, is eating away at the land. That lean isn't just picturesque, it is a fall in slow motion. The tree is literally reaching back for the stability of a receding coast, its center of gravity shifting over open water, as the sand beneath its roots is steadily stolen grain by grain by the very water that makes the scene so beautiful. The clarity of the water, often touted as the pinnacle of natural beauty, is in this context a warning sign. It indicates a lack of planktonic life, a fragile marine ecosystem potentially on the brink. It means the sands are constantly settled, undisturbed by the churning of rich, life-filled currents. This is not the vibrant, murky water of a thriving estuary. This is the sterile, beautiful blue of a swimming pool, a bathtub for a single drowning tree. Let's talk about the tree itself. It is almost certainly a coconut palm, Cocos nucifera, the quintessential castaway species. Its biology is a masterpiece of oceanic survival. The coconut, its seed, is a self-contained life raft, The husk is buoyant and waterproof. The milk is a sterile hydration and nutrition source for the embryo, and the hard shell protects against the harsh sea. This species colonized thousands of remote islands across the tropics by simply floating. That lone tree is a descendant of the ultimate pioneer, a Robinson Crusoe in botanical form. But its success is its prison. Having floated to this spot, it germinated and grew, but its own seed dispersal strategy now fails it. A coconut dropping from that leaning trunk will plop directly into deep, clear water and be carried away, perhaps to seed another distant shore. But it will not create companionship at home. It is trapped in its own pioneering success, destined to die alone unless another seed randomly arrives. Its life is a cycle of producing potential for new worlds while its own world withers. Furthermore, its iconic shape is a burden. All that biomass leaning out over the water creates immense torque on the shallow root system. A strong storm surge, the kind becoming more frequent with climate change, can easily undermine those roots. The salt spray it endures daily desiccates its leaves, forcing it to expend precious energy on managing salt uptake. Every aspect of its existence, from the shape of its trunk to the composition of its cells, speaks of a relentless, exhausting battle against elements that we, looking at the postcard, perceive as serene and welcoming. This tree is not on vacation. It is on the front line, and it is losing, in the most slow-motion, photogenic way possible. This single frame of perfect tranquility is, in reality, a snapshot of a decades-long crisis. The leaning is not a pose. It is a strain. The solitude is not peaceful. It is a sign of ecological failure. The clear water is not pure. It is often empty. We have aestheticized a catastrophe. And we have done it because, from our distant, landlocked, stress-filled lives, the image promises an end to struggle. It promises simplicity. It promises a world where one can bend without breaking, where one can stand alone against the vastness and be beautiful for it. The tree sells us a dream that is the exact opposite of its reality, and we buy it, we share it, we set it as our wallpaper, completely unaware that we are idolizing a monument to environmental distress. To truly understand the language of this lonely palm, we must become detectives of the invisible forces that surround it. Let's start with the air. The wind that shapes it is not a blank slate. It is a carrier of information, of minerals, of life and death. In many such remote tropical settings, trade winds blow with a consistency that ancient navigators used to the map. These winds, the Earth's great circulatory system, bring weather patterns, but they also bring something more subtle, salt. Constant salt-laden spray is a brutal adversary for any plant. The palm's waxy, tough fronds are evolved to handle it, but it's a constant physiological tax. The salt can coat the leaves, blocking the stomata, the tiny pores used for breathing and transpiration. Internally, the tree must actively exclude salt ions at its roots, or sequester them in older leaves that will eventually die and fall. A sacrificial process to purge the poison. Every graceful, swaying front is also a complex salt filtering factory, and the energy for that doesn't come from thin air. It comes from the sun, which in this supposedly idyllic location is another ruthless dictator. The tropics offer intense, year-round sunlight, a boon for photosynthesis, but with no canopy shade. The same sun bakes the exposed sand, creating a microclimate of intense heat and radiated light. The tree's trunk and the ground around it can reach scalding temperatures. The clarity of the water and the reflectiveness of the white sand double the solar assault, bouncing UV radiation back onto the underside of the leaves. The palm must manage its water loss with extreme precision, opening its stomata only during the cooler parts of the day to avoid desiccation. Its entire daily rhythm is a cautious dance between harvesting enough solar energy and avoiding fatal dehydration. And then there is the soil, or the heartbreaking lack thereof. What appears as pristine white sand is essentially a nutritional desert. Sand has terrible water and nutrient retention. Rainfall, when it comes, drains through it almost instantly, leaching away any dissolved minerals before the roots can capture them. The palm survives through a symbiotic relationship with mycorrhizal fungi. These fungi, invisible to the naked eye, form a vast, intricate network around the tree's roots, effectively extending their reach by hundreds of times. The fungi's fine filaments can extract phosphorus and other vital nutrients from the barren sand particles, trading them to the tree for sugars from photosynthesis. That lone palm is not alone underground. It is the hub of a secret, subterranean internet, a lifeline of fungal connections. But this network, too, is fragile. It depends on stable moisture levels and organic matter. As erosion worsens and the sand becomes more sterile, even this fungal partnership can fail. Now let's peer into that crystal clear water. Its transparency is a function of low biological productivity and lack of suspended sediment. In ecological terms, it's often described as oligotrophic, meaning few nutrients. This isn't inherently bad. Some of the world's most biodiverse coral reefs exist in clear, low-nutrient water through incredibly efficient recycling. But the key is balance and stability. A lone palm on such a shoreline often indicates a fringing reef that is either absent, dead, or too deep to provide a protective barrier. Healthy reefs break wave energy, creating calm lagoons that allow sand to accumulate and mangroves or other vegetation to take root, creating communities. The lone palm suggests this protective system has failed. The waves hitting the shore are likely direct ocean swells, which are powerful eroders. The sand is constantly being moved, resuspended, and carried away. The water is clear because the sand grains are heavy and settle quickly, but also because there's little planktonic life to cloud it. This lack of plankton can be a sign of a broken food web. Perhaps overfishing has removed the grazers, or rising sea temperatures have caused coral bleaching, which collapses the entire reef ecosystem that supports microscopic life. The water's clarity, then, can be the clarity of a ghost town, not a pristine sanctuary. It's a visual silence. Furthermore, that clear water acts as a window, letting sunlight penetrate deeply, which can heat the shallow seabed, creating stressful thermal conditions for any remaining seagrass or bottom-dwelling organisms. The very beauty of the scene, the visible sandy bottom, the perfect azure hue, is contingent on a lack of the swirling, cloudy, life-filled broth that characterizes truly thriving, resilient coastal ecosystems. We covet the sterile beauty of an aquarium, while the complex, murky mangrove forest that actually protects coastlines and sequesters carbon is seen as messy and unphotogenic. Our aesthetic preferences are literally backwards, and the lone palm is the tragic, beautiful poster child for this misunderstanding. The tree's isolation also speaks volumes about the larger terrestrial ecosystem or the lack thereof. A single tree cannot form a microhabitat complex enough to support a diverse community. It might offer a perch for a traveling seabird, a temporary rest for a butterfly, or shade for a ghost crab. But it does not create soil, it does not significantly modify the wind patterns, and it does not retain water runoff. It is an occupant, not an engineer. In contrast, a cluster of trees, a grove, would start to trap blowing sand with their roots and fallen fronds, creating dunes. Those dunes would grow, capturing more sand, building elevation, and creating protected spaces for other seeds to germinate: grasses, shrubs, eventually other tree species. A grove creates its own soil from decaying organic matter, its own shade, its own humidity. It becomes a self-sustaining fortress against the elements. The lone palm has failed to do this, or more accurately, the conditions have failed to allow it. Its solitude is a symptom of an environment stuck in a pioneer stage, unable to transition to a more stable, complex climax community. It is a biological holding pattern, a snapshot of arrested succession. This stasis is often human-caused, Perhaps the island was once forested and was cleared for copra coconut production, and this is the last surviving tree. Perhaps introduced animals, rats, goats consume any seedlings that try to establish. Perhaps the groundwater has become brackish due to over-extraction or sea level rise, preventing new growth. The tree stands as a lonely monument to what once was, or what could never be. Its leaning posture, therefore, is not just a physical strain against the wind, but a metaphorical strain against time, against history, against the ecological odds that are stacked higher every year. It is holding a line that is already invisibly behind it. Every frond that falls into the clear water is less organic matter to contribute to the hopeless task of building soil. Every coconut that floats away is a missed opportunity for companionship, lost to the vast, uncaring ocean. The system is in runoff mode, exporting its future, and the tree is the last remaining piece of capital slowly being spent down to zero. If we shift our lens from the ecological to the philosophical, the lone palm tree transforms from a biological entity into a profound cultural artifact, a mirror for the human psyche. Why does this image resonate so universally? It taps into deep, often contradictory archetypes within us. First, it is the ultimate symbol of resilience. We see a being standing firm, adapting, surviving against all odds in a harsh, beautiful environment. We project onto it our own desires to persevere through life. As storms, to bend but not break. Its graceful curve is seen as flexibility, a lesson in weathering adversity with elegance. In a world that feels chaotic and demanding, the tree represents a serene, steadfast endurance. It is the visual equivalent of the mantra, "keep going." But simultaneously, it represents profound isolation and loneliness. In the age of hyperconnection and digital noise, the image offers a fantasy of absolute solitude. There are no other trees to compete with, no buildings, no people, no signs of human civilization at all. It promises a clean slate, a place where one can be truly alone with one's thoughts, free from judgment and obligation. This duality, resilience and isolation, is powerfully seductive. It tells us we can be strong on our own, that we don't need the crowd, that true peace and strength come from a singular, self-sufficient existence. This is, of course, a biological fallacy. The tree is not thriving, it is surviving, and it is not truly self-sufficient. It relies on the fungal network, the rain, the specific geology of the shore. But we ignore that. We see what we need to see, a perfect solitary hero. This image is also the pinnacle of the escape fantasy. For the urban dweller buried in concrete, deadlines, and complex social grids, this scene is the antithesis of all that. It is simplicity defined. It contains only 4 elements: tree, sand, water, sky. It is visual silence. The brain, overloaded with daily information, looks at this and can instantly process it. It feels calm. There is nothing to figure out, no hidden text, no agenda. It is a cognitive vacation. Travel and tourism industries have spent billions weaponizing this exact fantasy. The deserted island trope is one of the most powerful marketing tools ever created. It sells not just a holiday, but a transformation. The promise is that by physically placing yourself in a version of this scene, you will shed your stress, your complexities, your past. You will return renewed. The lone palm is the logo for this promised rebirth. Yet, the reality of visiting such a place often shatters the fantasy. The sand is hot, the sun is brutal, there are insects, the tree offers scant shade, and the stillness can quickly morph into a feeling of vulnerability or boredom. The fantasy requires the viewer to be at a distance, to project onto the scene, not to inhabit it. This is why the image is more powerful than the experience. It allows for perfect projection, uninterrupted by the messy realities of nature. Furthermore, the image has been commodified to the point of abstraction. It is on screensavers, corporate wall art, product labels for shampoo and rum. It has become a shorthand for relaxation so ubiquitous that its original meaning, a specific tree in a specific struggling place, has been completely erased. It is now a glyph, a visual meme whose environmental truth has been bleached away, leaving only the aesthetic shell. But there is a darker, more compelling layer to this human fascination. The lone palm on the shore is a classic memento mori, a reminder of mortality. Its lean over the water suggests an inevitable fall. Its solitude echoes the human journey we all face alone. The endless ocean behind it represents the vast, unknown void, the passage of time, the existential abyss. The tree is a transient structure of life, an order poised precariously on the edge of formless blue. This is why the image can carry a subtle melancholy beneath its beauty. It speaks of beauty in decay, of grace under existential pressure. Artists and writers have used this imagery for centuries. It is the tree of the castaway, both literal and metaphorical. It is Robinson Crusoe's beginning and Tom Hanks, Wilson volleyball confident in Cast Away. It represents the human mind clinging to sanity and hope in the face of overwhelming isolation. In this rating, the tree is just a tree, it is the self. The curving trunk is the burden of life experience, the weight of years pulling us toward an inevitable conclusion. The clear water is the illusion of clarity we seek about our own existence, which often only reveals the depth of what we don't understand. This makes the image perennially relevant. It grows with us. As a child, it might represent adventure. As a stressed adult, it represents escape. In later years, it may come to represent a quiet, dignified confrontation with the finite nature of things. Its power is its ambiguity. It is a blank screen onto which we project our deepest needs and fears. And in the modern, anxious age, the projection has taken on a new collective dimension, climate grief. Unconsciously, we may now look at that tree and see not just personal escape, but a planetary one. We see the last tree. We see the shoreline of a world that is disappearing. The crystal clear water looks less inviting and more like a rising flood. The beauty becomes elegiac. It is the picture of a world we are losing, the paradise we set on fire with our indifference. The lone palm has become the silent witness to the Anthropocene, its leaning posture now, looking like a flinch from a wave of heat, a retreat from a rising tide we all know is coming. It is no longer just a symbol of personal peace. It is a symbol of a lost future, making its tranquil beauty almost unbearable to look at. This subconscious recognition is perhaps why we share it so compulsively. It is a digital sigh, a shared moment of mourning for a planet we fear we have already doomed, wrapped in the guise of a vacation dream. To move beyond projection and truly honor the scene, we must engage with the hard, data-based realities of its existence and what its future and ours likely holds.
Let's anchor this in science.
First, sea level rise. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, projects a likely global mean sea level rise of 0.18 to 1.1 meters by 2100, depending on emission scenarios. For a low-lying coral atoll or sandy shoreline, even the lower end of that range is catastrophic. Erosion isn't a future threat, it's a current, measurable event. Studies on Pacific atolls show shoreline recession rates of up to several meters per year in some locations. That lone palm's roots are quite literally in the crosshairs of a measurable, accelerating process. Its lean will increase until hydrodynamic forces overcome the root system's tensile strength, and it will topple. This isn't poetic speculation, it's coastal engineering. The crystal clear water will be where its trunk finally rests. Second, ocean acidification. The ocean absorbs about 30% of the carbon dioxide we emit. This chemical reaction lowers the pH of the seawater, making it more acidic for the coral reefs that might be offshore, or should be. This is a death sentence. Acidification reduces the availability of carbonate ions, which corals and many shell-forming organisms need to build their skeletons. A dead reef offers no wave protection, accelerating the erosion that dooms the palm. The clarity of the water after a mass coral bleaching event is the clarity of death, not purity. Third, intensifying storms. A warmer atmosphere holds more moisture and energy, leading to more intense tropical cyclones. The winds that shape the palm's graceful curve will, in stronger events, become the winds that strip its fronds, salt blast its buds, and push storm surges that scour away its foundational sand. The tree's entire survival strategy is calibrated to a historical climate norm that no longer exists. Its biological programming is for a world that is already in the past. Let's consider the palm's own biological limits. A coconut palm has a lifespan of roughly 82. This means the tree you are looking at in that viral image is likely only a few decades old. It is not an ancient sentinel, it is a temporal snapshot. Its entire life has coincided with the most rapid period of anthropogenic climate change in planetary history. It grew up in the crisis. Its seed germinated in sand that was already doomed. There is a poignant, terrifying timescale at work here. The lifespan of a single human and a single palm tree now neatly brackets a planetary tipping point. When that tree dies of old age, if erosion or a storm doesn't get it first, there may be no new seedling to replace it, because the beach it grew on may be gone, or the groundwater too saline, or the temperature too extreme for germination. The line of succession that began when a coconut floated to that spot centuries ago will end quietly within a human lifetime. This is the data point that transcends all data, the termination of a biological lineage due to habitat loss. It is extinction in miniature, happening on countless unnamed shores right now. While we use the image as a backdrop for our beachwear ads, what about the crystal clear water itself? Its clarity is a measurable parameter. Secchi disk depth, turbidity, nutrient loading. Scientific surveys of remote atolls show that water clarity can be maintained even as biodiversity plummets, creating an illusion of health. The key metrics are not what you see, but what you don't. The absence of juvenile fish, the low biomass of herbivores, the reduced coral cover. A 2002 study on remote Indian Ocean islands found that aesthetic environmental metrics like water clarity, often inversely correlated with resilience indicators. The most Instagrammable locations were frequently the most ecologically depleted, having lost the complex, turbidity-causing life that signifies a robust, nutrient cycling system. Our eyes are terrible scientific instruments. We are drawn to the simple, the stark, the contrasting, the lone tree against the blue. Ecology, however, thrives in the complex, the interconnected, the messy. The data reveals that the very scenes we idolize represent a simplified, degraded state of a system. We are falling in love with the ghost of an ecosystem. So what is the future? Predictive modeling for such coastal systems paints two broad pictures. In the business as usual scenario, the palm tree falls within a decade or two. The sand continues to erode, the freshwater lens becomes contaminated with salt water, and the islet becomes a sandbar, then a shoal, then a memory on a nautical chart. The crystal clear water covers it all. In a scenario of aggressive global climate mitigation and localized intervention, there's a sliver of hope. But it doesn't look like the postcard. It involves ugly, human-made structures, seawalls, groins, imported sand for nourishment, maybe even a concrete brace for the tree itself. It involves planting mangroves and other vegetation in the muddy, complex networks that would ruin the clean visual line. It means accepting that saving the reality behind the beautiful image requires destroying the image's aesthetic purity. The future of this scene, if it is to have one, is not as an untouched paradise. It is as a managed, engineered, defended territory. The fantasy of wild, self-sustaining perfection must be abandoned for the pragmatic, compromised work of stewardship. This is the ultimate collision between our romantic ideal and the scientific reality. We want the tree to be a symbol of natural perfection, but to keep it there, we must make it an artifact of human intervention. The data leads us to this uncomfortable, non-binary conclusion. To preserve the thing we love, we must fundamentally change it. And in doing so, change our relationship to it from one of distant admiration to one of hands-on, complicated, and often unglamorous responsibility. This journey from a serene image to a story of physics, biology, psychology, and data-driven crisis fundamentally changes the coordinates of our perception. The lone palm tree is no longer just a tree. It is a dialectic between beauty and truth, between our deepest fantasies and our hardest realities. It is a test. When you look at it now, what do you see? Do you see the escape hatch from your life, or do you see a life clinging to its own existence? Do you see a product to consume, or a patient in intensive care? The power of this realization is that it cannot be undone. Once you know the tree is leaning because it being pushed to its limit, once you know the clear water can signal a silent ecosystem, once you understand its solitude as a failure of community, the image is transformed. It becomes charged with meaning, with urgency, with a silent plea. This is the true hook of our story. The most peaceful image on earth is a cry for help. And that changes everything. It means every time we use that image casually, we are using the logo of a crisis as a decoration. It means our taste, our aesthetic comfort is built on a foundation of ecological misunderstanding. But this isn't a call for guilt. It is a call for clarity and then for action. Because the same cognitive shift that lets us see the tree as struggle is the shift required to address the planetary struggle it represents. We must learn to love the complex, the resilient, the interconnected, and the effective over the simple, the stark, and the superficially beautiful. We must champion the murky mangrove forest that sequesters carbon and breeds fish over the photogenic sterile sandbar. We must value the crowded, bustling, messy coral reef over the empty, clear blue lagoon. We must see the grove over the lone tree. So what can you do? This is where we move from witness to participant. First, rewire your perception. The next time you see this image on a screen, on a poster, in an add-on, to just feel the pang of escapism, see the story. Remember the wind, the erosion, the fungal network, the rising tide. Let it be a trigger for awareness, not just aspiration. Share the story, not just a picture. When you post or share such an image, add context. Say this beautiful tree is a testament to survival on the front lines of climate change. Shift the narrative one caption at a time. Second, follow the data, not the dream. Support and seek out science-based environmental organizations that work on coastal resilience, coral reef restoration, and mangrove reforestation. I will link several in the description below. Groups like the Nature Conservancy, Coastal Programs, the Coral Reef Alliance, and local initiatives in the Pacific and Caribbean. These groups aren't just saving trees. They are saving the complex, unphotogenic systems that allow trees to stand in communities, not alone. Your financial support, even a few dollars, goes further there than into any resort vacation that might be contributing to the problem. Third, be a conscious consumer. Understanding that the paradise tourism industry often puts immense pressure on these fragile ecosystems. Water consumption, pollution, coastal construction for resorts, and direct damage from activities can be the final stressor that pushes a place like this over the edge. If you travel to such places, choose operators with verified sustainability certifications, leave no trace, and consider volunteering a day with a local conservation project. Be a guest who helps, not just takes. But the most important action is systemic. The root cause of that tree. As precarious lean is the same root cause of the climate crisis, the emission of greenhouse gases from burning fossil fuels. Therefore, the single most impactful thing you can do for every lone palm tree on every threatened shoreline is to become a relentless advocate for climate policy. This sounds abstract, but it is concrete. It means voting at every level for leaders who treat climate change as the existential emergency it is. It means supporting policies that put a price on carbon, that invest massively in renewable energy, that protect old-growth forests and fund adaptation for vulnerable island nations. It means talking about climate not as a distant political issue, but as the overriding context for our collective future, the sea level rising under all our foundations. Your voice in your community, in your social networks, and at the ballot box is part of the cultural shift required to lower the global temperature and slow the rise of that crystal clear water. Finally, plant something, literally. Whether it a tree in your local park, a native plant in your garden, or by funding the planting of mangroves through a reputable organization. Engage in the act of putting life into the ground. Feel what it means to foster roots. Understand the patience and care it takes. It is the absolute antithesis of the quick, consumable, distant fantasy of the lone palm. It is messy, local, tangible, and connected. It is a personal pact with the future. That lone palm tree leaning over the crystal clear shoreline has been our teacher today. It taught us about physics and biology. It taught us about our own hearts and our longings. And finally, it teaches us about responsibility. Its silent, graceful struggle is a mirror for our noisy, graceless one. We are all leaning into a future that feels increasingly unstable, on a shoreline that is eroding beneath our feet. We can choose to see ourselves as isolated, heroic individuals in a beautiful but doomed landscape clutching our solitude. Or we can choose to see the truth the data screams and the tree silently models, that survival is not about standing alone and beautiful on the edge. It is about building and defending the networks, the fungal networks in the soil, the social networks in our communities, the political networks across our world that hold the line. It is about moving from being a lone consumer of beauty to an active, connected member of a living, struggling system. The tree's job was to capture sunlight and turn it into life. Our job now is to capture this insight and turn it into action. Don't just admire the bend in the trunk. Be the root system that holds the ground. Start today. Look at the links in the description, choose one action, and take it. Then come back here and tell this community what you did or what you learned in the comments. Let us build a grove of action, of awareness, of change. Because if we do this right, the future one, be a series of lonely, beautiful last stands. It will be a forest, and it will be strong.